All right, let's get started. Welcome to the Minnesota Concealed Carry course. Diego Campos, I'll be your instructor. We will meet at the range for obviously a shooting qualifier. This is just the boring classroom type information. However, it might seem boring. It's also a lot of safety information, so please, a couple things to note. You don't need a gun. You don't need anything other than a pen and a piece of paper, and obviously your computer to watch this. And let's begin. So first things first, you're responsible for your safety. If you see an unsafe act, immediately notify myself, the instructor. If you're at a range and you see an unsafe act, immediately notify a range master or some staff member at the range. Accidents happen with guns, and they oftentimes happen very, very quick. So letting something slide is not something you want to do at the range. If you see any unsafe act, please get some help from somewhere. Obviously covered, no ammunition is needed. If you have any questions, please ask me. We'll have adequate time at the range to cover any information that you have questions on. So the notepad and the pen are for exactly that. Jot down notes. You have any questions, please ask. This isn't meant to be a shortcut in terms of training. It's just meant for people who have busy schedules and can't get to the training, or don't want to, go to a Saturday or a Sunday training. So moving on. Requirements for a CCW: you have to be 21 years of age. Complete the application. You can't be prohibited from possessing a firearm. You can't be a gangbanger. Resident of the county which in you live is who you're going to be requesting that permit to. I suppose everyone's on a computer. You have the ability to print the application online. I will have that available for you. Just shoot me an email and let me know to bring one if your printer's down or you don't have a way to get this printed. Must provide the certificate once completed. Obviously, we're doing a shooting qualifier at the range. So once we're at the range, you pass. I will then email you or have it printed out. If you have issues with the printer, I'll have your certificate printed out ahead of time. Excuse me. Once again, just keep in mind, you need to email me if you need the certificate. If you need to have the test that I'm going to give you printed out, email these things to me. That way I know what to bring, so once we're done and complete, you're ready to go and apply at the sheriff's office. Okay, moving on. What we're going to be covering today is demonstrate the knowledge and components of a handgun, pros and cons of revolvers versus semi-automatics, demonstrate different types of ammunition, loading, unloading, clearing stoppages, and dealing with malfunctions of handguns, a couple different types of stances, isosceles and weaver, proper grip and sight the handgun, demonstrate the knowledge, care, and cleaning of a handgun. We'll cover a couple of the statutes, demonstrate basic weapon retention drills, conduct a range safety brief, and score a minimum of 80% on the sample firearms basic training handgun test. That's a written test, multiple choice, not too difficult. You'll have this PowerPoint to refer back to. You don't have to have this test completed if you have any questions prior. Well, like I said, we'll have adequate time at the range to answer any of those questions. Okay, types of pistols: semi-auto, single-action revolver, and double-action revolver. Semi-automatics, I'll just give you the pros and cons real quick of the semi-automatic. Typically, you can hold higher capacity rounds. Let's see, higher capacity rounds gives you the ability to continue the fight if a fight is needed, if you've got multiple threats coming at you. Semi-automatic pistols have come a long way. They are reliable. Let's talk a little bit about the cons of a semi-automatic. Cons of a semi-automatic: there's more moving parts, so there's more opportunities for malfunctions. Clearing malfunctions in a semi-automatic handgun, there's essentially 4 different types. Most can be cleared with the same method. However, identifying the type of malfunction could or could not be more difficult. Let's go to the single action revolver. Single action revolver is essentially a revolver where you have to pull the hammer back every time before you pull the trigger to make it fire. So for instance, if you want to shoot 4 rounds on a semi-automatic, you have to pull the hammer back 4 independent times and then fire the gun. Whereas double action revolver, you can just pull straight through without pulling the hammer back, or you have the option of pulling the hammer back. So single action revolver is more of your, I guess, nostalgic type revolvers, oftentimes called a cowboy gun. A lot of people get involved with recreational sports, and some of them would be cowboy shooting, and that's where the single action revolver would come into play. I would never use a single action revolver as a means of self-defense unless I had no other firearm available. Double action revolver, okay, so comparing the double action revolver versus a semi-automatic pistol. Double action revolver has, if you get a jam in a double action revolver, you're essentially, you have no way of undoing that jam. However, the pro is, if you use the correct ammunition that you shoot at the range with and you have a misfire, the next thing you do to get that gun to fire is pull the trigger again. Whereas the semi-automatic, you actually have to eject the round. We'll cover that a little bit more later. There's a video we've got on that. So, double action revolver, less round capacity, also easier to conceal based on the type. They come in very small, the type concealable guns, oftentimes called J-frames, very easily concealable. I carry a semi-automatic pistol and a double action revolver based on the situation that I'm in, and I'll cover that a little bit more later. Yeah. Okay, so I've got a video on all this. We'll just kind of lightly touch over this. Components to all modern pistols: they have a frame, they have a barrel, and then they have an action. Okay, a revolver is a pistol. A revolver is a pistol that has a rotating cylinder containing a number of firing chambers. So the actual cylinder rotates, and the hammer strikes each individual round. Once you're done shooting this revolver, you essentially break the breech, eject the rounds, and have to individually load 6, 5, however, whatever the capacity is, or you can get what's called the speed loader. So revolvers can be reloaded with some efficiency. However, not with the same efficiency as a semi-automatic with a higher capacity. I'll give you an example. Let's say I've got a 15 round capacity in a semi-automatic. It takes me, let's say, 3 seconds to burn through, maybe 5 seconds to burn through 15 rounds. I can easily be multitasking with both hands. The gun hand, or the hand that has the grip on the gun, I can single-handedly eject the magazine. At the same time, be reaching for a backup magazine with the opposite hand, reloading it very quickly. Let's say it's 5 seconds again to reload, and then I have a fresh new round of 15 rounds. Then it takes me 5 seconds to burn those 15 rounds. That's 30 rounds in 15 seconds. Now you might be thinking, well, what's the case of having that much of a threat to where I would need to have 30 rounds? My point might be mute, but then again, it might not based on the circumstance. I'll leave that up to you and figuring out which gun you would like to use, revolver or semi-automatic. Now, let's go through that same scenario with the revolver. Most typical round capacity with the revolver is, say, 6 rounds. So let's run with that scenario. You've got a revolver with 6 rounds. You shoot those 6 rounds in, let's say, 3 seconds. You drop the cylinder out of the gun. You have a speed loader. It takes you 5 seconds to load the next group of rounds. So that's 8 seconds. It takes you another 3 seconds to burn the next 6 rounds. So that's 11 seconds, and you've only shot 12 rounds. Whereas I, with the semi-automatic, had a 15-in-1 capacity. It took me 5 seconds to load the first 15. It took me 5 seconds to reload. And by the way, that's a long time to reload. And I'm fresh with a new batch in my magazine, in my gun, of 15 rounds ready to go. So within 15 seconds, I can shoot 30 rounds. And with the revolver, with 11 seconds, I can just be loaded. I could have shot 12 rounds. So the math is there. When I can carry a semi-automatic, I do. It's just much more efficient. So the breakdown and detailed look of the revolver. Take a look for yourself. Please pause the recording if you want to take some notes. And the look at the semi-auto pistol. Take a look, pause the video, take some notes. A lot more components in the semi-automatic, a lot more things happening. However properly trained, you can get through or work through a jam very quickly.